What's anime? Uh, um, so a while back, I said I was gonna do a video about Hancock, right? And when I do that shit, it's to hold myself to things. So like, even if I put a picture up in the community section, I use that as like a fuck. I said I was gonna do this, and like they can see that, so I gotta do this. And so, I kind of try to go by like feeling on stuff that I talk about. And so I said something about Hancock, I don't even know when. And then other shit kept popping up, right? So today, I was like, okay, I gotta watch the next Guardians of the Galaxy. Because by the way, the first Guardians of the Galaxy is just a fucking movie. I don't know what he was talking about, to be honest. There's what he said was in the first movie is not in the first movie. I'm gonna ask him about that. Maybe he was mistaken. I think he was mistaken, and he's maybe talking about the second movie. I'm gonna watch that next. Anyway, so I'm about to turn on the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and I'm like, fuck, I still haven't watched Hancock, and I paid for that one. That was a part of a donation. That's what I do with donations. I put it back into stuff for the channel, whether it be experimentation stuff or, you know, research materials, whatever. I should have gotten Hulu because there are two movies on Hulu that I really want to cover. One of them is the new Hellraiser movie, amazing movie. And there's another movie that I don't want to announce yet. Also, not amazing, but it's a really, really good movie and I want to talk about it. Not really metaphysical, just kind of super conspiratorial and true. And I think it used to be more like conspiracy, like if you would have talked about it, people would have been like, nah. But now, everyone fucking knows about that one. But when I get Hulu, I'll unveil that one. Anyway, Hancock. So most of the movie, I'm like, fuck, I'm not gonna have anything to talk about with this movie because it's mostly just a movie. But I'd say like 2/3 into the movie is when it starts saying the stuff that made me put the movie up as a topic of discussion in the first place. Okay, so if you have watched my videos before, the reason I talk about movies is because it's very obvious that, truth, esoteric truth, occult truth gets put into these movies, right? On various levels. And it's not to say that it's all movies, and it's not to say that it's always definitely the case. And what I mean by that is sometimes you have to kind of be able to read between the lines, or sometimes it's code. And Hancock, I believe, is kind of like dancing around the truth and inverting the truth. I guess that's a better way to say it. It's inverting the truth. Because if you haven't seen that movie in a while, it's from like 2008, I think, or some shit. What you find out at the end of the movie is that Hancock and Charlize Theron are gods. They're gods, and the explanation that Charlize Theron gives to Will Smith Hancock is ridiculous. And so as I'm listening to her explain, I'm like, oh, this is why I wanted to fucking talk about this movie. Because what she tells him is, we have to stay far apart. When we get close together, we start to become human. And so you need to get as far away from me as you can, and the farther away you get from me, the better you'll feel. And what I think is happening with this movie is almost like it's like an entire movie to kind of subconsciously implant the idea that if you ever get to the point that you start kind of self-deifying and looking into who you actually are versus this thing, that is perpetuated at you. Oh, you're only human. Oh, YOLO, you only live once. Like, all these things that are pushed at you and perpetuated. If you start to notice that you're different than others, if you start to realize, like, man, everyone around me just doesn't think like me, and I'm kind of fundamentally different, not just on a mental level, but like physically. And, not going to get into the details of that, but if you also potentially start to notice, like, man, it really seems like I'm getting fucked with for some reason, like someone has something against me or something, say you start to get into all that, wouldn't there potentially be things out there to kind of run an interference against that? That's what my brain started thinking, and this is just theory. Not pushing it on anybody, or anything like that. What's up, Void? Void says, what do I mean by physically? For instance, there's a specific thing that is being and has been pushed. And a couple of examples are, some immediately said, oh, I don't want to get sick or potentially pass away, so I'm definitely going to take this heavily experimental, what we've now come to know to be a bioweapon. And I think they'll be a little more laxed on people speaking about this, because now mainstream channels and media are, the studies have been done, and it's now they're running kind of like PR. Like, yeah, okay, so there's adverse, they're being more upfront about it. But some of us were like, I'm not taking that shit. It was automatic. I'm not fucking taking that shit. And then to take it a few steps further, some of us potentially, avoid that thing. Some of us were like, I think I might have that, or I think I might be sick. Whether you think it's a real thing or not, some people don't think it's real at all, which placebo is a real thing. The power of suggestion is something that they use very heavily, but I do believe that they were fucking around with something. And for anyone at all to believe that they just put some shit into a medication that is meant to do the things that thing does, for you to think that they are not putting that in other stuff is dumb. I'm just gonna put that out there. Not trying to like spoil anyone's day or make anybody feel emotional or defensive, but for all of us that talk about truth and truth seeking and all this stuff, there are many that seem to be very biased in what they accept to be true. So they'll accept, oh, they're putting stuff in the thing. But then when you start to tell them a whole bunch of other truth, like, oh, well, they're also putting it in your water and in your food and in the sky and in the ground that you are going out barefoot and grounding in, then people get defensive. And they're like, oh, shit, well, that's too far. That's obviously not true. Can you prove any of that? And then if you go on to prove those things or show them, patents, samples, the things that I've put on this channel that I did my own independent research with, then those beings get defensive. And so it's not to say that I'm comparing those of us that I'm talking about with the literal sense of the Hancock movie, because it is a movie. It's using suggestion and it's using symbolism, and when they make movies like this, they play around with the concepts in order to convey what they want to convey, but also to confuse. similar to the Marvel movies and all that stuff. Or I mean, really, it's just movies in general, just depending on what you're looking at. Um, but getting back to what I mean, like, she explains to him that they've been referred to as many things throughout time, throughout history. Angels, gods, and then she's like, all of a sudden now we're superheroes. That was the first thing when I watched this movie recently. Not this time, but the time before this, which wasn't the first time I watched it either. Hearing her say that, I'm like, huh, interesting. And this was years ago, so now I've been doing research into these things, and she's essentially talking about my ultra-terrestrial theory. She's referencing my ultra-terrestrial theory. I have a video that talks about that at length in my documentation playlist. If you haven't seen that, I talk about like my specific theory into what the different types of ultra-terrestrials may be and how that can explain a whole lot of culture that is kind of like the linchpin of civilization and like society currently. So when she's explaining this to him, because he's in a hospital, he's been shot, and the bullets actually hit him. Whole movie, he's been like a superhero. Nothing can touch him. So as she's explaining this, and I'm listening, I'm like, okay. So she's saying the closer that they are to each other, because they are the same, it drains their power. It makes them less powerful. And he says, why? And she says, so that we can experience life and love as humans. Which, to me, sounds fucking ridiculous. So, and again, this is my theory, not saying that this is what the movie actually is or anything like that. This is how I'm interpreting it. And I am sure of my interpretation. Not saying that I'm sure it's the absolute truth or whatever, but when I think about my interpretation, it makes more sense than what the movie is implying to you. Because if we are gods or angels or any of that stuff, I happen to feel like I'm being kept away from others that are like me. And not just feel, it's not just that I feel like I am being kept from others like me. I've tried to test it. You know what I mean? I've tried to test it. And like gigantic things would happen to keep that from happening. You know, intense things. I don't necessarily want to go into it, kind of personal shit, but like very, very intense things in order to keep that from happening. Recently, I think I talked about this. If I didn't know, fucking well. But recently, someone like found their way into a private group that we discuss our research and all kinds of stuff. They got into our group and tried to like get some of us to join a cult and like go to where their cult is. And named a few states. Little shit like that. Like, if you believe in the concept of there isn't anything that happens for just no reason at all, which I am, I believe that things happen for a reason. The sequence of events of my life, I don't think that it's been that way for no reason. While I'll admit, I'll submit to you that a good bit of that is me not being willing to like give in or to give up being who I want to be and who I am. I also think that there are other factors that contribute to that. And so, again, it seems very much to me like there is some outside, I hate using the word force because it sounds so fucking supernatural, but that's not necessarily what I mean. There are things other than me that seem to very much want to influence aspects of my life and how it functions, and influence decisions that I make, places that I go, meaning move to, and very, very strange things that when I hear other people talk, they're able to just do the things that they want to do within reason if they have the resources, or even if they don't. Some people just say, you know what, I'm fucking moving. I'm going to quit my job and just go. That doesn't work the same way for me. Some things, it's like, okay, this seems like it's going fine. If I choose a specific place, like if there's someone there that seems to like resonate with me and I resonate with them to this level, and we have these things in common, I am not allowed to go to where they are. I can say that with confidence. I'm not allowed to get anywhere near that person. And, you know, I'm trying to become more comfortable on the channel with speaking about things that I don't have, you know, here's the proof type shit. This is one of those, you know. This is, a lot of it is experience of my own and intuition and discernment. And from multiple situations, I am not allowed to go to where those beings are. And so when I hear the explanation that was written for this movie, it makes zero sense. It's meant to sound romantic, and if you're not really paying attention to the movie, or even more so, not necessarily that, if you're not thinking about it from this vantage point, from this perspective, then you may just accept that explanation. But if you really think about it, it makes zero sense. Why would they be created to pair up and die? That's her explanation, is that they were created in twos, and he asks, what happened to the rest of us? Oh, well, they paired up and died, and we're the only two left. What sense does that make? That makes zero sense, especially the implication that they used to be called angels. She didn't, you know, she didn't shy away from that. She didn't confirm it, but she didn't shy away from it. The other two things out of the three things that she gave as like things that they were referred to: gods, angels, and superheroes. And so the first two of those things are very, very like, let's call them dogmatic, you know? And dogmatic would denote God. That would denote, you know, the stories that we've been told about angels and gods, not necessarily Abrahamic, just in general, gods and angels. You know, the daemons, divas, all that stuff. None of them are created to die. None of them are created to die, and you know, the stories of beings even sort of like that die are essentially half-bloods, like Nephilim. And that's if you accept the story given as far as what Nephilim are, because there's a few different interpretations. Some people believe that Nephilim are just the sons of Cain and the sons of Seth mixing, which to me is just as, you know, that's potentially true too. But it still said they ended up fucking monsters. But you could take maybe they were just monsters and not giants. But it literally said giants though. So, you know, left to interpretation. I'm still looking into that currently. A lot on my plate though. But, yeah, her explanation makes very little sense. And when I like zoom out on the entirety of the movie, it's almost like the concept that I keep talking about with the 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 subconscious implantation of don't go down. Only focus on up, don't focus on down. It's the same thing. The entire movie is basically saying like being powerful is lonely, and if you start to feel powerful, you should drink or do drugs, or you should dull that power because it's too much for you to handle. And then when they finally do realize, or when he realizes, because she knew the whole time, but when he does realize what's going on and becomes happy about it, and even says to her, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she says to him to get away from her. And so, again, zooming out, the movie is essentially saying to you, like, don't ever be around your kind, our kind. And I found that to be very specific and interesting, especially when you take into account her explanation, because she's not saying it from a position of pain. When she explains it, she looks like she has a reverence for this, these physics, this rule system that they have. And maybe it's acceptance, but I don't think it is. It seems to me like, and I'm just saying this from a movie perspective, not her character. Like, the director was like, "Hey, don't look sad when you do this monologue. Look happy. Look not even happy necessarily, but don't look sad." Essentially, it just seems very much to me like not predictive, social engineering, because that's not predictive programming. That's essentially like programming your subconscious mind to denounce your own power, to not look for the others, to stay away from the others, to be haunted, or to feel cursed by your gifts and divinity. And that might sound weird, again, if you haven't watched the movie recently, or if you're not watching it with this lens, then it may sound weird. It's like, no, it's just a movie. It doesn't come off that way to me. It's paused right now. I'm literally watching it. It's about to end, but I'm literally watching it right now, and had to. Usually I let the movie finish, but I wanted to get this off because it's like very, very. I get a very profound feeling of the things that I'm saying currently. Just off the no, not even just off the last third of the movie. The entire movie is like making you feel sorry for Hancock. This dude is immortal, doesn't age, and has superpowers. You could view it that way, or you could view it as angelic powers. You could view it as God powers. He's a divine being. You don't need all those labels and titles. He's a divine being, and throughout the entire movie, they're like, "Oh, you should feel sorry for this dude. His life sucks." And they do give you a reason, and the reason is he has amnesia. He has amnesia. It just seems very, very familiar in totality. The story itself seems very familiar. It seems like it's talking about a very specific group, small group of beings, but it's trying to like twist the story to give you a very different perspective, and to program that perspective, the outside perspective, into your subconscious to make that your perspective. And it's, very apparent and dumb to me. So I don't know that there's more to this that I wanted to talk about, but I definitely wanted to get that perspective off, because I don't know what I guess I just remembered that there was something about this movie. I thought that I was going to end up talking about the fucking Anuna. I thought that this, which it could be, it may very well be that this is about the Anuna. Because another aspect that I noticed is that it says they're made in pairs, right? And even the Bible references, or Abrahamic religion, because I think some of it's apocrypha and not canon, but it references us being made in twos at first. I think that's in both. I think it's in the apocrypha and the canon text, but made in twos for a long while. We were twins every time we were born as twins. Cain and Abel, you know what I mean? Like, it very specifically that thing. It just seems very much like they're referencing specific stuff, because he obviously is Aboriginal and she is not. I don't know if I would say Caucasian. I don't know what she is specifically, but they're not siblings in the way that we would think of it, but they're the kind of like, I don't want to say biblical siblings. I just don't like that, but I think I kind of have to, right? That's what I'm referencing. So yeah, biblical siblings, and but they're supposedly made for each other. They're the yin and the yang for each other. They're the polarizing opposites for each other that attract. But in their story, when they attract, they hurt each other physically. They drain each other's power. I think that is the inverse. It's inverted specifically to give you misinformation. I think that there is a fear of the few of us that there are getting anywhere near each other. I think there's a fear of us getting anywhere near each other. I think there's a fear of us genuinely being able to speak for more than a couple times. And I have personal experience that seems to support that. I don't know specifically what that is or what it would be. I think it kind of has to do with other aspects of my research, other aspects of my theory. Specifically, like the simulation part. A couple of things that it made me think are, if this were to be some form of simulation in the way that you think of it, then is there something that would fuck that simulation up if we were to be too close in proximity, or if we were to interact too much, but there's no way to confirm that theory. There's no way to test that theory directly, other than doing it, which, like I said, that's essentially what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do. But very hard to document those things, and very hard to measure those things. But yeah, I found that interesting. I feel like the movie's mostly over. I kind of remember the ending. There's maybe 10 minutes left or something like that, but they're literally having the conversation in the movie right now. I just had to pause it and kind of get these ideas off. I think there are other movies that do very similar stuff. Maybe not in the exact same way, where it's the complete inverse, but I do think misinformation is kind of strewn into these movies that have a lot of esoteric truth and occult truth to throw you off. I think that many beings that do like research or are searching for their meaning, longing for meaning and stuff like that, you hear people say stuff like, oh, well, cosmic law says they got to tell you the truth in one way or another. And y'all get lost in that, I think, because, again, I've said this before, I don't think that works the way y'all keep telling each other. Like, I'm not saying that that's maybe not the truth, because it kind of seems like that is something, it's something like that. But the way that I keep hearing it get quoted to, you know, to the masses is like, oh, well, they gotta tell you the truth. I don't know that, I think they just have to say something, maybe. Or reference it even. I don't know, but it seems to me like even that might not be true. Like, people break laws. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because it's cosmic law or whatever doesn't mean that shit's true. And furthering that or expounding on that, like, I still am doing research on the simulation theory. So from that perspective, that would be, it would just be like hacking the code or something, you know? Like, I don't think that, it's very obvious that that's not being stuck to. So regardless of what the specifics are, that shit's not true. Like, there's plenty of stuff that is happening right now that they don't tell any of us. So I don't understand why people are still saying that to each other. Well, you know it's cosmic law. They got to tell you about it, right? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. So, yeah. I don't think I have much more than that. I just wanted to cover that because I really thought I was going to watch this movie and be like, all right, well, this isn't worth making a video about. But it was, and it is. The movie is worth watching, even if just for pondering something similar to what I'm pondering, or maybe something else. Maybe you catch something else that I didn't catch, but it's not a super deep movie. The farther I go back, the less kind of like deep movies that I haven't watched a billion times I find. I was about to say the less deep movies there are, but there's like Vanilla Sky and Requiem for a Dream. There's all kinds of shit, so that's not true. But yeah, I appreciate you hearing me out. And Hancock is a good movie. I do like this movie, but I do also think that it is misinformation. I think it's an attempt to kind of like subconsciously, is to shift some shit around in your subconscious, almost like putting limiters or governors on you subconsciously, because, you know, it may not work. You may say to yourself, oh, well, now that I'm aware of it, why would it work? It's almost like retroactive shit, because when beings talk about shit like what I'm talking about right now, and in the many other videos, any metaphysical shit, I think many that hear these things are like, well, that's obviously not real, right? But then if and when you do find out it's real, what would happen is your brain is going to grasp at anything that can, you know, reconcile that, so that your brain doesn't break. Like, if you very suddenly caught on fire but didn't burn, you didn't have any pain, like you were the Human Torch, that is traumatic. You think it's not going to be traumatic, and that's something I kind of want to talk about in a different video. But I don't think many are preparing themselves for like random shit for random shit to potentially happen to them. I was going to try to figure out a different way to say that, but yeah, to them. You know, some of this shit may be uncomfortable, it may catch you off guard, it may be very, very traumatic and take some getting used to, or take a lot of getting used to. And when that happens, it's very likely that, speaking at least from a psychological standpoint, your brain would have to grasp at straws like, oh shit, what is happening to me right now? And so, even though you're not thinking that you're doing this consciously, your subconscious is looking for any representations of what may be happening to you that it can find. And so, when it's doing that, it's going to look for, most likely, all these fucking superhero and god movies and shit, angel movies that they've been dumping on us for at least all of my life. You know, all of my life. So that's why I've always liked horror movies. That's why I've always liked science fiction movies, fantasy, because it, in a way, it prepares me for things that I've always kind of known were real, and I've always kind of known would come back. Don't really know why, just, it's always kind of, since I was a kid, it's always been that way. And within that, I've learned that, you know, sometimes they're being upfront, sometimes they're being very, very disingenuous, or, you know, like trickster energy, you know. And trickster doesn't necessarily mean bad, it just means not direct. But sometimes it can be bad too, so I don't know. Very interesting to me. If you get a chance, or if you have the movie Hancock, think about that. Watch the movie if, you know, get bored or something like that, and think about it. Anyway, appreciate you hearing me out. If you would like to support the channel, or you know, contribute, donate to the research that I'm doing, the PayPal will be in the description of the video. It's also in the description of the channel. Very, very, very appreciated when those happen. And if you do contribute or donate, if you have a question or a topic or a suggestion, or you want to participate in the dream show or participate in general, or if you just want to say something cool, do that. You know, you can do messages on PayPal. There's also an email though, gammaauobsidian, gammaauobsidian @gmail.com. Gammaauobsidian also on Instagram. And yeah, later, peace.